What is backup mode in Robocopy? I am trying to copy a large database backup file over network. The traditional program copy or copy failed with different binary resulted. Also tried Robocopy without parameter and resulted a failure. Just did another attempt with Robocopy using /ZB parameter, restart and backup mode. It took much longer but resulted in a success. My question is backup mode really designed to copy large backup file? Have searched through net and couldn't find a clear answer. Would appreciate if any experienced user could give me a hint or better solution.
Just want to share an update on resolving the issue above. In my case, Scopy failed to copy the file over 10 GB across servers in different domain and server location. On the other side, Robocopy with /ZB uses restart mode. If access is denied, this option uses backup mode. Can successfully copy. It increased the time from 1 hour to 2.5 hours though. After rearranging server, the file is copied across servers in the same domain and server location now. And using Scopy is alright too. So my theory on this would be probably about the stability connection between servers. If the connection is not robust, with occasionally dropout causing an access issue, when copying large file like my case, a corruption likely occurs any time during the long process. Robocopy with restart and backup can recover the copy pretty well. Time spent on recovery is probably the downside. And as a side note, FTP instead of copy should be used if it's going to be a routine task. Backup mode is a way to read and write files ignoring any permissions problems. It uses the SBackup privilege, reading, and restore privilege, writing, in order to read/write any and all files, disregarding any ACEs that would prevent you from reading or writing a file. Normally when trying to copy or access a file, Windows performs a check to make sure you have permission to read or write to location, but with SBackup privilege, granted to the backup operators and administrators groups by default, and restore privilege, also granted to the backup operators and administrators groups by default, these checks are bypassed. On domain controllers, the mentioned user rights are also available to the server operators group. From the documentation for SBackup privilege. This user right determines which users can bypass file and directory, registry, and other persistent object permissions for the purposes of backing up the system. This user right is effective only when an application attempts access through the NTFS Backup Application Programming Interface, API, through a backup tool such as backup.x. Otherwise, standard file and directory permissions apply. This user right is similar to granting the following permissions to the user or group you have selected on all files and folders on the system. Traverse folder/execute file. List folder/read data. Read attributes. Read extended attributes. Read permissions. From the documentation on restore privilege. This security setting determines which users can bypass file, directory, registry, and other persistent object permissions when they restore backed up files and directories, and it determines which users can set valid security principals as the owner of an object. Granting this user right to an account is similar to granting the account the following permissions to all files and folders on the system. Traverse folder, execute file. Write. To check if your account has these privileges, you can run the command, whoami/priv, at a command prompt.
I would strongly suggest that you create a snapshot and back up the now quiesced file system. You can then run Robocopy quickly using /j Unbuffered I/O for large files. Here is a script for creating a shadow copy of C, which it calls P. This drive, P, is a static image of the C drive, perfect for backups. We use this technique to copy active virtual machine disk images to a backup drive. The following uses 4 script files. A batch file to kick it, the disk shadow commands. Disk shadow commands to destroy any previous shadow if the inner batch file crashed. A series of disk shadow commands to create the shadow as P. A series of commands to execute while the shadow is active, an inner batch file executed while P is active. 1. The batch file to start the process. Two. The shadow command file cleanup.cmds to destroy a previously active shadow. 3. The shadow command file diskshadow.cmds, which builds the shadow and then calls the 4th file. Four. The command file backup.cmd to operate on the shadow. Note that Windows Server 2016, and possibly other versions, runs a shadow copy twice daily during the week, which will cause the shadow copy created below to crash. Make sure this backup technique doesn't overlap with these automated scheduled shadow commands.
To expand on Eric's answer, here's how to use PowerShell to create and destroy the snapshot. This can also be run on a remote machine by using PowerShell remoting.
Filetransfer is easy to